it's me again. Alright, part 2 of Anti-Bullshit-Man stuff. Hopefully it'll just be this part 2, I don't know. Yeah, maybe more later, some other time. Other fish to fry and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, unfortunately, the last video I just kept going. I didn't know the camera stopped. So I have to go all the way back to... Okay. But for this last post, which you unfairly referred to as a rag, yeah, so obviously it was a rag. I mean, you're just ragging. You're just complaining about, I think, trivial shit, and making a lot of accusations about my ineffectuality that I just think is kind of bullshit. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I posted this conundrum in it and went unanswered. Well, I didn't go unanswered. I said I was just giving a summary of the fact that you posted a blog. So yeah, in the summary, I didn't answer every point made, idiot. I mean, no, I'm sorry. I mean, jerk. Yeah, I guess this is more of a jerk than an idiot thing. But I mean, you're being kind of a jerk. I did a little summation about, oh yeah, Anti-Bullshit-Man posted a blog, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so it didn't go unanswered. I mean, that innuendo, like I somehow avoided it or something. I didn't avoid it. I never even got to the blog post. I didn't even finish reading the conclusion. Shithead. Alright, since inmendham is bent on being a truth-teller on top of being a harm eliminator, this fierce monoism collapses into covert pluralism. Alright, so he's making the accusation that this monoism and pluralism relates to the idea of value, I think, being based on rigid principles versus unrigid themes. And his accusation is that somehow, in being a truth teller and being a theorist and an activist, I somehow collapse my principles and end up talking about themes. I suppose some of this happens in the sense that when ethical conversation comes up, when you're talking about the moral landscape, much of the moral landscape has to be in this context of the world that exists, and it's going to continue existing, and people are going to continue playing this unplayable game. And so obviously, if they're going to keep playing this unplayable game, it's by different ethical rules than the rigid principles, because you can't have rigid principles and play this game, because the rigid principles would make it impossible. Because first, you're violating consent all over the place. You're violating fundamental principles all over the place. There's no other way to play the game without violating them. So, it's a game that can only be played by violating principle. And so, yes, when you talk about solutions that aren't complete solutions, that are just band-aids, the band-aids are going to be in an ethical context different than the principled context, because they've already violated principle. What else can it do? I don't think it matters that it does do that, and I'm not being dishonest about it. So you say covert pluralism. I don't think I'm being covert about it. I use the word social contract. I do make an effort to have a conversation that identifies when I'm talking about the real deal, which basically is a retard shaping poo into the image of Madonna is just as his happiness at making I don't know, making Lego characters out of duty is just as real and just as meaningful as the value somebody watching a beautiful ballet is experiencing. And so even though the elitist fucktard who thinks he's doing something high-minded and important, ballet appreciation, it's really no better than a retard enjoying poo manipulation. Now, the point I'm making there is that that would be the principled argument, is that, yes, as a practical matter, if human beings are going to keep living this social dignity thing will mean something. But in a real sense, it means shit. In the real world, it means shit. And all it really is just another silly extravagance. I think somebody can follow along that these are two different subjects. How to play a lousy game is one subject. Whether the game, and the fact that the game shouldn't be played is the other subject. The game shouldn't be played, but if you're going to play it, yeah, you're going to have to refine the rules. You can't play by rational rules, because rational rules can't be applied to an irrational game. That's probably the best way to put it. Alright, what else can it do? That this continues to escape him is a testament to his unwillingness to lucidly examine the finer points of his idiosyncrasy. Fuck you. I mean, that's all I can say to that. I mean, it doesn't escape me, shithead. But what escapes me is, how is this significant? I can't argue final solution principles in a world where final solution isn't accepted. So, obviously. So you have to bend the rules to fit the circumstance. So that's all I'm doing. But I'm not doing it in any kind of covert way. I'm overtly stating this is not the right answer, but it's better than nothing. So yes, social contract is better than nothing, but it's not correct. If I'm wrong here, he will have no qualms in choosing between the following. So I'm sure this is going to be a false choice. You know what I mean? Two stupid choices. Like, you can pogo stick across a minefield, or you can throw mines in the air and hope they don't land on you with your eyes closed. Being a propagandist who reduces plenty of harm through non-stop activism offline. Okay, so you propagandize and reduce harm by lying to people or fooling people or doing something silly. Okay. Being a truth teller who reduces less harm by devoting much time to theory. So, being a active liar who convinces people to do something for the wrong reasons, say like being a vegetarian for your own health or something, yeah, versus somebody who sits back in the background and attempts to figure out a strategy or an argument that will be decisive. It will be the ultimate weapon. It'll nuke them. And you might succeed or you might fail. Anyway, fanciful notions of activism, whatever that signal, greater than, not greater than, theory, symbiosis needs to be stamped out before the conversation can get even off the ground. Fanciful notions of activism, whatever that symbol means. Activism versus theory? I don't know. Symbiosis. So somehow this idea that activism and theory can be symbiotic need to be stamped out before a conversation can even get off the ground. Theory equals apples, activism equals oranges. Easy does it. So he's basically saying that theory and activism are oil and water. They're somehow not mixable. That's your theory, and I don't see any real argument defending it. I think your anecdotal evidence is just that, anecdotal. It's not very deep or thorough. It hasn't persuaded me that there's any conflict between these two things. And I think theory can be, it's almost like I think you could make a TV show that would be quite entertaining, that would be humanly productive. Like you could have a competition to cure cancer or something for $1 million or some kind of thing like that, and people would watch it. And it would be a constructive competition. Offer $1 million prize for groups of people to create a car that gets 10 miles more per gallon. Something like that. It's a watchable program, and it would have a end product that would be valuable to society. So in a sense, I think theory and activism can be blended together and become even more. The theory gets better and the activism is more potent if it's done right. The fact that most of the time it's done wrong doesn't mean it can't be done right, I guess is my argument. I think YouTube can be done right. The fact that YouTube does it wrong doesn't mean it can't be done right. So which is it? You recognize that there's no symbiosis between the two, and if you insist on the intrinsic value equals feels only premise, then why should truth even have to factor into anything in the first place? Oh shit, this is going to be complicated. So which is it? If you recognize there's no symbiosis between the two, and if you insist on the intrinsic value equals feels only, intrinsic value is a feel. Yes, that's true. Feelings are the only thing that have value. Experience is the only thing that has value. And how you feel having the experience is the only element of value. Why you're feeling good or all that kind of crap doesn't really matter. Feeling good is really the end game. Then why should truth even have to factor into anything in the first place? I don't really care about how people feel about living their life in this circumstance. That doesn't mean anything to me. People being happy now doesn't really mean anything. What means something is the future. The future is much bigger than the present. So in theory, everybody being horribly miserable now, today, for 100 years, I would pay that price to liberate the future from horrible misery or suffering. So that's just the truth. There's greater value in the future. It's bigger than the present. So I'm really not that concerned with feels only, and I'm really not concerned, I'm not all that concerned with this feels only part of an argument that has to do with this wishy-washy, mushy kind of feelings. This isn't really about fixing any big problems. The easiest way to cure some of the worst human suffering is just to have a realistic right to die. I mean, giving people who are dying the right to expedite their death would be the biggest way to eliminate the most human suffering. I mean, it's the biggest waste of suffering there is the fact that we torture people for the last 3 months of their lives for no good reason whatsoever. Alright, whether something is recognized as true or false has nothing to do with outcomes. So again, he's just arguing that if a lie can get you there, then it's okay. And I'm just arguing, yeah, that's true sometimes. Like I say, it's sort of true with vegans, right? Vegans for their own personal health. The end result is the same. But I would argue that it doesn't have any power to apply it in any other way. The principle isn't correct, so therefore it can't be applied to any other subject. So they're not likely to be anti-natalist or anything other valuable here. They're not getting the suffering sucks element. They're just getting the personal comfort element. And that's an element that almost has nothing to do with the reason why I'm a vegetarian. I would argue that even if it made you miserable to be a vegetarian, even if it killed you 10 years sooner, rather than giving you 10 more years of life, I would still argue it was worth not imposing the suffering. So the principle is important, and I would argue that I just think you're underestimating how destructive it is to the cause to have people pushing for something for the wrong reasons. You can sort of see that in politics and economics. People are targeting the wrong thing because they don't understand in principle what has value. They don't understand that rich people don't make money. They don't create anything of value. But they think they do. They think they create money. They think they create value. And they don't. They only rape it. They only steal it from workers. Workers create all the value. So I'm not understanding that principle. So even though somebody might be for taxing the rich, if they're protecting the rich for the wrong reason, again, they'll do it wrong. they won't understand something like inheritance. They won't understand some other element, and they won't understand why they're supposed to be valuing work. They're not supposed to be devaluing ownership. They're supposed to be valuing work. Anyway, valuing truth in and of itself only works if you're a pluralist. Valuing truth in and of itself only works if you're a pluralist. Well, I'm just saying there's no value to a plural truth. So that doesn't even make sense. I don't think a pluralist is any, I don't think that's rational. So to say valuing truth in and of itself, I'd say there's no truth value in your notion of competing or dual definitions of value. I think the core rudiment of value is crude and simple, and that it only has one form, and that's this negative. The negative comes first. The alleviation of the negative creates the positive. There's no room for pluralism in here, and I don't think you're valuing the truth if you think there's some other truth. So I don't know what to say to that, except I call bullshit. Says you. That's my response to that. Says fucking you. You do at times talk like a pluralist, but you're uninterested in exploring the underpinnings of the movement it's pointed out to you. Oh, the moment it's pointed out to you. Sorry, no movement. Exploring the underpinnings of it the moment it is pointed out to you. Yeah, I'd say I'm uninterested because I'm saying in principle it makes no sense to me, first off. What are these added values? Define one for me, describe one for me, and I'll be able, I think, to point out how it's just another silly addiction. It's not a real value, it's just something you're addicted to, just something you have an attachment to that doesn't have any real merit. It's only psychological rubbish. You view it as being pushed into a corner, but that's not the case. I don't view it as being pushed into a corner. I don't understand it. So I don't think that's a fair paraphrase. I'm not rejecting it because I'm hostile to it. I'm rejecting it because it doesn't make any sense to me, and that's an honest statement. If it were true, I'd say fine, but I don't think it's true. I don't think any of your values about any kind of autonomy or some dignified notions in people's heads, I don't think any of that shit really has any meaning. Bottom line, I don't think even fairness means anything in the end. All that really means anything is the outcome. Are there more crippled people on the floor? Period. About those nihilists you despise so much, keep in mind that ethical egoism, oh shit, another strange bit of terminology, ethical egoism. Oh, you mean selfish convenientism? Well, I can't call it, I'm going to find a word for this. Ethical selfishism is the actual position that says the agent ought to, so what's the agent's own interest? Egoism is the actual position that says the agent ought to, so what's in the agent's own interest? The agent ought to what's in the agent's own interest. And keeping in mind that the second order realism, keep in mind that second order non-realism, I thought that was anti-realism or irrealism. Second order irrealism doesn't prescribe anything in terms of first order ethics. Can you just answer the ultimatum from the Post? No. I guess this is an ultimatum too? I don't know. I'm just saying these are false choices in my opinion. I don't know what world I would prefer. Dysfunctional world A, dysfunctional world B. I'd like to blow both of those worlds up. Alright, I don't know what this is. Keeping in mind that ethical egoism is the actual position that says the agent ought. Well, this whole agent thing is just bullshit. The only thing that can ought is qualification. Qualification ought. If the pilot drops dead of a heart attack and you can fly the plane, you ought to fly the plane. If you're qualified, you should take the reins. If you're not qualified, it doesn't matter whether you're an agent or not. It doesn't matter whether you have an opinion. If it's not a qualified opinion, it ought not to do a motherfucking thing. It ought to just stay in its fucking chair and shut the fuck up. So this whole idea that agents have authority or integrity is just absolute bullshit. Until they prove themselves to have competence, they're nothing. So to just say incompetence ought, to me, means nothing. And clearly, this ego of ours is not a place you go to look for competence. The ego is a desire mechanism. It is not an intellectual mechanism. Alright. Well, so fuck the rest of this. I'll just get to this crap. Think of it this way. Would you rather live in a world where everyone shares your particular take on meta-ethics? I don't even believe in meta-ethics. There's ethics, period. There's right and fucking wrong. There's the best solution and everything that's less than that. You know, fuck this meta shit. Everyone is a robust realist. While disagreeing with your normative position, everyone is an ethical egotist. Alright, so I live in a world where everybody shares my realism. So they all have a real perspective. They all believe that there's a truth. While disagreeing with your normative position, my ethical position, that everyone is an ethical egoist. So they don't agree that people are disagreeing with your normative position, that everyone is an ethical egoist. My normative position is that everyone is obligated by facts to do the right thing, and I just don't give a fuck about what they want. So this ego shit has nothing, should have nothing to do with what is made as a decision. So if somebody shows me the facts and says, if you hang on a cross for 2 weeks, it'll cure cancer, I'm going to have to concede, even though I don't want to hang on a cross for 2 weeks, that, yeah, I have to hang on a cross for 2 weeks. Would you prefer a world where you enjoy full agreement on the normative side? Everyone is an anti-egoist. So we agree on ethics, and full disagreement on the meta-ethical side. Everyone is a non-realist. But we agree for non-real reasons. So people believe it because Donald Duck says so. Alright, so everybody's a vegetarian because Donald Duck told them to be one. And so we agree not to eat animals because Donald Duck told them to. Or do I want to live in a world where people eat meat, but they agree that suffering sucks? See, that doesn't even make sense. They can't really agree with me that suffering sucks and still eat animals, so that's not going to work. But let's just say you're creating 2 worlds that suck. I don't want to do either one of those, so fuck it. Yeah, I want to live in a world where everybody's obligated to be rational, and when they're irrational, we get to just smack them in the head until they wise up. I don't know what to say to you. People are assholes. They don't have rational responses to anything that's told to them. They don't understand the truth of reality. There are no mystical forces. There's no magical energy. We're fucking DNA molded fucking psychotic lunatic pieces of shit. Monsters set loose into the world. We're zombies essentially, right? We just keep living and then dying and then living and dying and living and dying. And we're just consuming, reproducing, addicted fucking parasites. That's the world I want to live in, where people recognize the truth that we're fucking pieces of shit and we shouldn't make any more shit. Alright. I'd much rather see a world filled with anti-egoists who happen to be irrealists. Well, I just can't follow along, so sorry. I'm glad you found one of these worlds you'd much rather live in. I personally don't want to live in a world where people don't eat meat because Donald Duck told them not to. It's just too irritating. I can't be alone in picking that over the alternative where I'm stuck with 7 billion normative egoists who happen to be meta-ethical realists. Big whoop. Well, again, you're giving me a choice between a world where people don't agree with me and how could we possibly see eye to eye? So you're saying that somehow their actions are consistent with what I want. So that's the Donald Duck world. In the alternative world, their actions are not consistent with what I want, but somehow they agree with me? No, you're just saying that they're fanatically religious. So you're just saying that just because they believe in a reality, it's not the a reality I believe in. So I'm supposed to somehow think those are an equal choice? You're going to give me a fair choice there? I mean, quite obviously, in the one world, I don't get either one. We don't agree on anything. Yes, they're fundamentalists, but they're crazy. So what fucking good is it? And the outcome is no good. So neither thing we agree on. We don't agree on the basic structure of logic and the facts of reality. And we don't enjoy the same outcome. And in the second choice, you're saying we didn't arrive at the conclusion through just as much bullshit. They're not fanatics, but they don't understand reality at all. But at least their behavior is consistent with what I think is ethical. Well, of course I'll pick the world where at least I get the outcome, because in the other world I get nothing. I don't get agreement on anything, and besides not getting agreement on anything, I mean, you're just basically saying that a world where they're fanatically religious and I'm fanatically atheist, and we act decisively different than each other. Like I said, that's a lose-lose world, and the other world, at least I win the conclusion. So yeah, of course I'm going to pick the world that's at least the outcome is okay. But I'm still not going to like it. I'm still not going to like living in a world where people are doing the right things for the wrong reasons. Alright, anyway. If the realist and non-realist are both anti-egoists, and if they're the sort of people who actually act on their ethics, the outcome between them will be the same. Oh, fuck. Act on their ethics. If the realist and the non-realist, realist, are both anti-egoist, I'm not even going to fuck this. The only difference is in the virtue behind doing the right thing because the realist agent believes it's true with a capital T versus doing the right thing because it pleases the non-realist agent psychologically. And I'm saying that's a substantial difference that over time will erode the cause. Over time it will prove itself, it will reveal itself to be a lie, a false principle, and that false principle will have consequences. So I'm saying clearly on a subject like antinatalism, let's say ethylism, I don't understand how somebody could even be an ethylist and not understand that you're doing it to prevent unnecessary harm. But even if you were just a feudalist and you believe life was feudal, you still wouldn't have an incentive to. Feudal doesn't mean bad. So I'm just saying I don't know how somebody could possibly be anti something unless they've defined it as bad. Why would you be anti if you haven't described it or defined it as a bad thing? That doesn't make any sense. I don't believe these people exist as you describe them. Which brings us to the consequentialism versus non-consequentialism. Well, again, it just really, it's really great to have good motives. Virtue is a good thing. I mean, you should have good intent. You should have a good plan and then exercise it. But the truth is that sometimes you just get lucky and sometimes you get unlucky. But it's just true. Failure is failure. If you fail because you're unlucky, well, that's just too bad. You failed. It's still a fact. So the consequences are still the only thing that matter. This is the way it is. Your consequentialism is supposedly as strict as it can get. You piss on non-consequential ethics whenever someone brings them up. Well, I'm just saying that I don't piss on the idea that it's more likely that you're going to have good consequences if you have good intentions. Intentions do relate to consequences. So clearly, good intentions are a good thing. But they're not everything. And outcomes really where the rubber hits the road. I mean, it's the only thing that matters. But when you get right down to it, much of what really bothers you ethically is utterly inconsequential. I don't know where that comes from. What bothers me ethically is utterly inconsequential. I just don't believe that. I mean, I just don't believe I have inconsequential ethical principles, but I may have some. But I don't think it's an ethical violation for somebody to do the right thing for the wrong reason. I think it's a logical violation, and I think it's nothing to build a cause on. It's not. It doesn't give your cause credibility to have false followers, nor does it give it durability. So those are two important things: credibility and durability. And false prophets, so to speak, don't give you either one. Anyway, false apostles. Arguing for a given position not because it's true, but for some other reason. If you're this ultra strict consequentialism you claim to be, it just cannot matter if you won't excommunicate people, and you won't excommunicate people over it. Well, again, you're saying it's not consequential to have false apostles. And I'm saying it is consequential. It's dangerous. It will hoist you on your own petard. They won't be there. They won't make it to the finish line. It's like having psychotics in your army. There's every probability that when things go crazy, they'll start shooting you. Alright. Mockery of suffering. People can mock it until they're blue in the face. It won't worsen the suffering itself. Well, again, that's not the point. You know, obviously I know that. What I'm arguing is that mockery creates an atmosphere that will create more suffering in the future. That mockery feeds the very forces that create suffering. In fact, I mean, it's the acceptance. We have all this shit in the world, and it should be unacceptable. It should be unacceptable that 2 million kids go blind every year for a lack of vitamin A. It should be unacceptable. Somehow we've made it acceptable. I'm arguing that it gets to be acceptable because of this lack of principle. In fact, it's a positive insofar as it brings more joy to the mockers in the moment. Well, again, in the moment, the mockers are satisfying their desire. They're feeling good, but the effect of that mockery is future policy, future politics. The world doesn't take something seriously. You could say the people mocking global warming or something are harmless. They're not harmless. they're harm makers. So they will make future harm. So I just fundamentally disagree with you that these mockers of suffering are harmless. They feed. Harm wouldn't exist without them. They're a vital part of maintaining harm's existence. Yeah, I mean, when good men do nothing kind of argument. It's the good men doing nothing that make it possible for the bad men to own the world. If you find this ethically unsettling, perhaps you're more of a non-consequentialist than you thought. If you find this ethically unsettling, again, I don't consider this part of ethics mocking. I don't consider arguments about ethics to be ethics, ethical or unethical. I consider them to be stupid or ignorant. They're still harmful, but it's not unethical. It's not unethical to be an idiot. It's not unethical to be a moron. Now, some of these people I think know they're wrong, and I think they even know there's a great danger in the philosophy they're promoting. So some of them might be guilty of an ethical crime, but most of them are just stupid fucks, distracted by their own selfishness. They just can't grow out of being a dumb animal. Or a moral particularist like me. No, well, I'm not, and I think I've explained why I don't fit in that category. Also, you don't comment on the moral internalism versus moral externalism. Oh, man. Moral internalism versus moral externalism. Oh, man. Part of the post where I point out the difference between... Yeah, I didn't get to that because who wants to even mess with this concept of morality being somehow a description of something other than facts of existence, not personal facts of existence. They're not. There's no such thing as internal values. There's value, period. Part of the post where I point out the difference between immortality, that's what it says, right? And amorality. It's immorality and amorality. Or how the mere existence of a amoralist is demonstrative of externalism's correctness. Amoralist, externalists, the mere existence, externalism's correctness. I just don't know what to make out of that shit. Immorality versus amorality. Well, to deny value aggressively? I mean, is that you're just measuring how aggressively they're denying the existence of morality? I'm just saying it's just kind of silly to make a distinction between an A and an M. To say there's no, I mean, one of them is more obnoxious in their violation of value. I don't know. Well, who cares? Externalism holds that our well, you should have defined it somewhere back here. Externalism holds that our ethical convictions don't necessarily drive our behavior. It holds that our ethical convictions... Well, what's an ethical conviction? You mean a factually defendable position or postulate? Belief? Don't necessarily drive our behavior, or as I put it, the causal chain behind our motives to act ethically or unethically is a separate subject. Causal chain between our motives to act ethically or unethically. we always have conflicting motives. Just as I stated before, I want to be selfish. That's what I desire to be. Clearly, I have an alternative desire to honor truth and the logical obligations of existence. I understand those to be an obligation not to create harm. So I understand that I have to create enough good improvements to the house for the damage I caused to the house. So if I'm living in the house, I have to be able to leave the house in a better condition than I got it, or as good a condition as I got it. So for everything I break, I have to fix something else or improve it. So the premise of your argument here is false, in that there's always conflict between desires. And the motivational mechanism, as monkeys, we have most of our desires are generated by bullshit, nonsense, impulses of biology, and the psychology conducive to evolutionary success. They have no rational credibility. They're irrational desires. And then all of our ethics are usually something for which we don't have, we accept reluctantly. There are restraints and restrictions on what desires we can act on. They tell us where we can piss and poo, and who we can give the finger to. Well, that's a good rhyme. And a whole bunch of things like that. They confine our behavior. They deny us freedom. So yeah, I just don't buy this argument that ethics, the only ethic worth anything is going to be one developed through reasoning. The ethics of your love of your family or your race or your tribe, although functional and superficially unselfish, it is in fact corrupt, and it is just another form of bigotry. So even though it has some altruistic elements, they're not truly what they're disguised as. They are truly just selfish DNA. I'm trying to come up with a word from when the DNA makes something rise in you. I'm just not thinking of the greatest word for that, but that's what they are. They're manifestations of that syndrome. They're not reasoned. They're not intelligent. They're corrupt. They're dirty. Yours is the internalist view, is it? Where ethical convictions give rise to ethical motivations. Well, again, I hate that terminology, because I obviously think the ethical truth is external, and I'm merely recognizing it. So merely because I recognize it, you're calling it an internalist view. It's not internalist. It's an external truth I recognize. I recognize the external truth of evolution. It changes me internally. It changes how I contemplate reality. But I wouldn't call it internalist. So my ethical convictions are merely recognitions of facts in the world, external to me. Facts about how the world is. And those recognized facts give rise to ethical motivations. I would say they're not really ethical motivations. The motivation is I recognize the difference between good and bad. I recognize bad is the lesser condition, good is the improved condition. I wish to satisfy the necessary. I wish to attain categorization as a good. So I wish to obtain whatever properties good things need to have to be in that category. Because I do not wish to be in the failure, less than, bad category. So my motivation is my own I have a competitive nature, and I wish to win the game of life, and I understand to win the game of life you must produce more than you consume. But if this is true, how do you explain the existence of amorality as a separate form of plain immorality? How do you explain the existence of amorality as a separate from plain immorality? I explain both of them as non-intelligent perspectives. So both of them are just a kind of fucktard. One kind of fucktard is sociopathically insane, and one kind of fucktard is just sociopathically stupid. Is that good enough? So one's insane and one is stupid. They're both wrong. One's wrong physiologically, and one's wrong intellectually. Is that good enough? Anyway, I better not be blocked. Yeah, well, you weren't. But anyway, I like a guy who can type all this crap, and it's relatively coherent, and he's good at doing that, and he can write shit. But yeah, it's shit. I mean, it's just. I don't think these are, as much as he thinks, these are well-constructed, well-thought-out, well-evidenced arguments. I don't see them as, I don't see any evidence. And what evidence there is anecdotal. And I think it can be revealed to be superficial and deceptive, and plainly not evidence for what he thinks it is evidence of. So anyway, that's probably enough of that. I'm tired. Who made you the judge? This is a funny remark. I hate this worthless pussy so much. I hope he gets what he deserves. That's not about AntiBullshitMan. That's about the stupid logic rolls of dice. And so, Interconivide said, who made you a judge? So it's so funny. He says, I hope he gets what he deserves. And he puts deserves for the question mark. He's not imposing judgment. He's saying he hopes he gets what he deserves. I mean, you can't, that's like wishing somebody a happy birthday. I hope he gets what he deserves. I mean, can you wish somebody anything better than what they deserve? I hope I get exactly what I deserve. Yeah, that's what I wish to get exactly what I deserve. Yeah, I can't wish for anything worse than that or better than that, right? That's just like as good as it can get. I get exactly what I've earned. I don't think these people are making an honest effort. I don't think they're living a life trying to be good. I want to be destroyed by something trying to be good. I want to be harmed by something trying to be good. So I want them to get what they deserve in the sense that they're not trying. So I want them to get run over by somebody not trying. That's exactly what they should get. They should get the train wreck because they've earned it. I haven't voted for the train wreck. I voted for running this train really, 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 really slowly until we figure out whether it's worth running at all. You're the ones that have no caution. You're the reckless assholes. You should get what you deserve. Train wreck. So no one judged you, anybody, Anticontavad. I wish you get exactly what you deserve. I hope the world, the piano that falls on you, is just as honest as you were. just as spoke with just the same, had the same depth of integrity. Yeah, that's all I wish. Yeah, the rope was made by somebody just as honorable as you. The rope holding the piano. The sword of Damocles should have been glued with what you're using as propaganda. Because it is crap. What's wrong with contradiction? Right. What's wrong with pretending reality doesn't exist because it's a pain in the ass? Yeah, well, I guess what's wrong with it is because then it's hard enough to play this game. It's a really hard game to play, but it's really hard to play it if you have your eyes closed. You know, it's like throwing darts with your eyes closed. I mean, it's a little tougher that way. It just is. You know, some of us can do anything, you know, because we're just talented, you know, but most people can't. Yeah, well, I was just thinking about like golf putting and stuff. You know, I used to putt. You know, I was pretty good. Well, I was a pretty good golfer, but you know, putting was kind of fun because it's such high. You know, it's such a muscle memory kind of thing in so many ways. So I'd actually putt. You know, I'd line everything up. I'd look at the, you know, look at everything, and then I'd deliberately close my eyes and putt. And yeah, I didn't putt quite as well, but you would be amazed how well I did putt. I mean, they were really good. And what it really took away, it was really good on short putts, because it's, you know,